Hey there, I'm sitting outside of the Leggett building here on the Tacoma Park campus to talk to you about writing narrative essays. The narrative essay is assigned a lot this time of year. It's September right now, the start of the fall semester. A lot of English professors assign narratives as the first essay of the semester. So right about this time, students are starting to come into the writing center with their professor's feedback on their first attempt at the narrative, and the feedback is something like, oh, this is off topic, you're not writing about what I asked you to write about, the organization is unclear, I can't tell what your thesis is, and all of those kinds of things. So in this video, I'm going to explain a little bit about how to structure a narrative essay. I won't be going so much into dialogue and description and things like that. Those are for future videos, but this will help you to outline and focus the narrative a little bit better. Something to keep in mind when you're writing a narrative is that it's basically cause and effect. Cause and effect is the primary modality in a narrative, but it's cause and effect about your life. What is causing the change in you that you're writing about? Basically, the narrative essay is an event that happens to you and the lesson that you learned from it. Prompts in English 101 might look something like, write about a time when you learned an important lesson, or write about a time when you overcame a difficult obstacle. And sometimes those prompts also pop up in places like application essays, and other times when you're asked to write about yourself and write about your own growth. And your own growth is the key point. We are interested in stories about people who grow and who change, and not so much stories about people who stay the same. And also, if it's a personal statement or an application essay, why are there planes overhead? If it's some kind of an application essay, then they also want to see that you do grow and you do change and you are not stuck in maybe a not so mature place or not so helpful place. They want to know that you are willing and open to change, because that is the key to success quite often. So as I said, the narrative essay has an event and it has a lesson. The event is something that happens to you, but it might be something that you signed up for, really. It could be a class that you signed up for, or it could be something like a car accident that happened to you. It could be an unexpected success, winning a lottery ticket, or publishing a book. Those are things that happen to you, even if you are the one that signed up for them. A lot of the times, narratives do deal with painful topics. I mentioned car accident. The death of a loved one is a frequent narrative topic for a really good reason, because the first time we lose someone that we care about and we lose them forever, that changes us fundamentally. And that's what the change that we're looking for ought to be. It ought to be a fundamental, lifelong change. Events that are not good narrative topics are just sort of like skills that you pick up. Oh, I learned to speak French. Well, if that's all you learned, if that's the only way that you changed, is that now suddenly you can conjugate, au revoir or something like that, that's not really a fundamental change. Or you learned how to fix a car. Wonderful. More people should know how to do that, but it's not fundamental unless that skill led to a bigger change in your life. So to use both of those examples, if learning French opened your eyes to other ways of thinking, if it introduced you to really important people, if it changed the course of your life, then yes, that is an event you can talk about. Same thing with learning how to fix a car. If that opened the doors to independence in your life, if it taught you, oh wow, I really want to be working with my hands, I don't want to be, at a computer all day, then those are things that are worth writing about in a narrative essay. It's got to be a big change though. Now, the lesson has to be big. The lesson has to be something that you carry with you for the rest of your life. And that fact will be referred to in the conclusion. It can be referred to in the introduction. But if it's not something you can say, if it's not something you can refer to as a lifelong lesson or something you still have with you, again, not worth writing about in a narrative essay. Lessons don't have to be positive. They usually are. We like reading about positive lessons more than negative lessons, but in real life, sometimes the way we change is not the way we want to change, and it's not a way that we're necessarily happy about. And that's part of the human experience. So if something happens to you and you realize like, oh wow, I am not invincible, actually. This thing happened to me and I learned that I can get hurt. That is such an important lesson to learn. It's such a painful lesson to learn. And so human, and that's what makes it a good narrative lesson, to be honest, even if you might not like it. It might not feel good to know that. So to recap, event and lesson, the two things that a narrative essay usually requires. An event that happened to you causes you to change, to grow, to learn a lifelong lesson. The thesis of a narrative often takes that shape. The time that I blank taught me blank. So some other examples of that, again, a positive event, something like, let's say that you won $1 million. You might say, winning $1 million was great at first, but in the end, it taught me to value people over material concerns. We have the event, the winning of the money, and then we have the lesson. Something negative that might have happened to you, I used car accident earlier. You know, the car accident is the event. The car accident taught me to not only value my own life, but the lives of others. It's a relatively short thesis statement, but it does the job. It's possible to have more than one lesson, especially if they're connected, because one event often does teach us more than one thing. An event like being rejected from your dream school, again, very nice narrative topic. You could say something like, being rejected from the University of Maryland not only gave me a chance to explore more of my passions here at Montgomery College, but it also forced me to grow and become a more responsible student. So you get two lessons right there. You're exploring your passions and you're becoming more responsible as a student. Now that you have that, you have the event, you have the lesson, we need to figure out how to get 5 paragraphs out of that. So here's a basic outline. You have your introduction, body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, body paragraph 3, and your conclusion. The intro and the conclusion will be reflective to some extent. Your thesis will always go as the last sentence of your introduction, at least for college papers. And I'm not going to do anything else with the intro yet. That'll happen later. I'm going to jump to the body paragraphs, body 1, body 2, body 3. We have to first decide where the event will go. I usually recommend putting the event at the bottom, or so the second half of body paragraph 1. It doesn't have to go there. It could go at the first part of body paragraph 2, but it does need to go early in the essay. If it goes too late, then we don't get enough about learning the lesson, and the learning of the lesson is the entire point. So if you have it at the last sentence or the last section of that first body paragraph, then you're focused on the response to that lesson. Body paragraph 2, just the middle paragraph, is all about your immediate response to what happened. So let's say it was a car accident. This could be the moments following the accident. It could be the couple of days after the accident. if the accident caused some really significant injuries, some really significant damage to you or to others, in cases like that, you can spend a little bit more time on that because the injuries themselves might be part of the lesson. But regardless of the time frame, the second body paragraph is your immediate response, and it's frequently the wrong response. A lot of the times when something bad happens to us, we don't grow right away. That's just not normal. What we do frequently is retreat into ourselves. Whether other people harmed us or we did something that caused the harm, we retreat. We are not often showing our best selves after something bad happens. And honestly, after something good happens, we're not necessarily showing our best selves either. In the example of the car accidents, you might be in shock. That's completely normal. You might refuse to believe that it happened. There might be some denial. Denial is very normal after some kind of a loss. So if you're writing about the loss of a loved one or the loss of your autonomy, the loss of your independence, the loss of a dream, the loss of an ability, then denial is totally normal. Anger is totally normal. A lot of people will shut down in cases like that. And other people might be trying to get you out of that, and you might be refusing them. What we see here in body paragraph 2 is kind of the wrong way to approach the growth. You're trying it the wrong way first, and then you try it the right way in body paragraph 3. And in some cases, there are people who might take a year to really start to come out of whatever funk they're in after something bad happens. Completely normal. Sometimes it might take longer. For the sake of a college paper, we don't want it to take too long because this is a story. But there's not actually a limit to how long it can take to quote unquote learn the lesson. Let's say that something great happens to you. Let's say you won $1 million. Your immediate response might be to go blow all that money on all kinds of stuff. Maybe you buy a boat or a horse or, all kinds of stuff that you don't need. Maybe you buy 1 million houses, a bunch of fancy cars. I will say, and this is an interesting place to include this, do remember when you're mentioning things like this that your professor is going to read this, your classmates may read this, your tutor may read this, people who are walking by you while you're typing it on the computer might read this. So let's say you won $1 million and you spent some of that money on things that you don't necessarily want to tell everybody you spent the money on. You don't have to give us those details. Okay? Let's say that something terrible happens to you and you were so depressed that you did things that you're not necessarily proud of, things that are completely understandable and normal, but you don't necessarily want everyone to know. You don't have to write everything in the paper. You don't have to tell us everything. This is your paper. The details are up to you. If you feel like you can't talk about this without giving details that you don't want to share, pick a different topic. Not every topic is suited for a college essay, and this is a college essay more than anything else. It's not. I heard someone say that college writing cannot be therapy, and I stand by that very much. The point of this is to teach you writing skills and to get you a grade. Learn the skills here to do this effectively with a topic that you're completely fine sharing and discussing. And then when you're ready to share it with a different audience, you'll have some more of those skills. Back to structure, though. Body paragraph 2, as I said, is the wrong way to learn the lesson. Body paragraph 3 is where you start to learn the lesson the right way, quote unquote. This is where the growth really happens, and this is where you start to actively grow. It's where you start to actively change in the way that you said you would in the thesis. In the car accident example, if the car accident taught you to value your life, then in body paragraph 3, you need to show us what that looks like. Maybe in body paragraph 2, you're depressed that it happened, you're in pain, maybe you lost the car, and you're kind of grumping about it. Understandable. Body paragraph 3, you realize, oh wow, that could have been a lot worse. Maybe you get a new car, and not only do you appreciate the car more, but you appreciate the fact that you can drive more. And this leads you, oh, you know what? Things are pretty good. Life is okay. Whatever the situation is for you. But we need to see that progression. If you won $1 million and the lesson is that people are more important than possessions, maybe in body paragraph 2 you blew all of the money on cars and boats and really expensive musical instruments and whatever else, and then you don't have any money left again at the end of that, which is actually something that happens to people who win the lottery sometimes. They come out of it in worse shape than when they started. So let's say at the end you actually end up in debt because you spent more than $1 million. It's surprisingly easy to do, I've heard. And it's your family and your friends who come to help you. And they help you deal with the things. And that teaches you that, oh wow, the money was nice, but it's not as nice as these people. That's going to be in body paragraph 3. The blowing the money on the yacht and everything, body paragraph 2. Body paragraph 3, your friends and family come to bail you out, if that's the case. With those things in place, we're still missing some parts of the outline. You might notice we have 2 complete body paragraphs, body paragraph 2, body paragraph 3, and we have less than half of body paragraph 1. We might only even have a sentence there, depending on what the event is. Here, once you have the event, the reason that I did it this way is because we need to make sure that we can draw that connection between the event and the lesson in the way that we want to. Because if we can't do that, we need to make more changes that are fundamental to the essay. But once we have this here, we can start filling in everything else. And the first thing to fill in is the first part of body paragraph 1, which is the background information. What were you doing before the event? What were you like before the event? We need to see here that you didn't have the lesson. You hadn't changed. You hadn't learned what you needed to learn. You were not who you are today. Example of the car accident. Let's say that before the accident, you were sort of just very reckless. You were just driving however you wanted to do. You didn't really value yourself. Maybe your self-esteem was low. You didn't really value other people. You thought, you didn't think bad things could actually happen. It's, a common mindset until we learn otherwise. This is what we want to see at the beginning of body paragraph 1. It should maybe be 8 sentences, very ish. 6, 8, 5. But we need to get a sense of where you were at that point. It could be in the minutes before. It could be the hours, the days, the months. But it shouldn't be too much before. It should really capture a snapshot of a part of your life before the event, so we can see the change. I like to use the movie Star Wars as a reference here, where we see a little bit of Luke Skywalker before the Empire attacks. We can see not only kind of what he's like, but we also see that he's bored living with his aunt and uncle. You know, he wants some adventure. He kind of wants to get off the little desert planet. And then, boom, the event happens and his aunt and uncle are killed. And that forces him to change. We don't see everything that happens to him before that. We only get a snippet. And that's what we should see for you as well. Once we have that, we have the body paragraphs. And we have our thesis. So now we can fill out the introduction and the conclusion. The introduction will introduce us to the topic in general, possibly to you. Some of that background information can go in the intro, but it should definitely give us a sense of what kinds of things are going to be happening here. If you're talking about the car accident and that changed you, you might talk about, recklessness in the introduction. If you're writing about winning a bunch of money, then the introduction might mention luck or suddenly winning things. Windfalls could come up. Or it could be about money, it could be about finances. Some sense of we're talking about this kind of thing here. Part of the reason we want to do that is so that the reader has some sense of how heavy the topic will be. If there is, for example, some kind of death, it's nice to give a hint of that in the introduction. I'm not necessarily talking about trigger warnings or content warnings, although if necessary they can be added somewhere. It depends on the professor. A lot of them don't need it. Most of the time, if it's going to be really triggering, I would say don't write about it. But if I'm reading an intro paragraph and it seems like, learning to have fun and enjoy life and laugh, and then in body paragraph 1, someone's dog dies, I will be a little bit thrown by that whiplash. If it's something like that, you might mention dogs in the introduction. You might say that, in fact, not might. You should say that in the thesis. You should say specifically what the event was in the thesis, and then we know what we're getting ourselves into. Okay, conclusion, almost done. The conclusion brings us to the present, because this event, whatever it is, happened in the past. Might have been last week, but it happened in the past. Probably didn't happen last week, and probably happened before that. Bring us to the present, and maybe into the future. If you're talking about a car accident, in the conclusion, how has this impacted you right now? How has this changed you? How is the lesson still sitting with you? Do you drive differently? Do you still interact with people differently? If you won a bunch of money, how is that part of your history interacting with your present? Do people still talk about it? Do you regret anything? And this can be regardless of the topic. Do you regret it? Are you glad that it happened? Are you happy about the change? Some of this can be reflected on in the conclusion. And if you're going to be looking towards the future, maybe I would do things differently. Or I will, when that happens again, I'll do things differently. Or I wouldn't change anything if it happened again. Do you advise people? Do you have suggestions for people? Those are all things that can go into the conclusion. If you referenced something in the introduction, you can bring it back in the conclusion, have nice little caps at the top and the bottom of the essay. And then once you've got all of those things in, then you can start adding in that delightful descriptive language and the sensory details and dialogue if it's called for, and all of that. But first, check the structure. Okay, hope this video was helpful. Hope this gave you a better idea of how to structure your narrative essay. If you still have questions or concerns, please come on down to the Writing Center. I'm going to leave the instructions for how to do that in the description box below. And have a great semester. Bye. Happy writing.